How's everybody doing? Okay, we're going to learn about the new purchase agreement. Few updates, little interesting. Of course, I get to listen to Ashley at nauseum of all the changes, and hopefully all the changes will help us understand some of the recent questions that we get. But I always start here on Paragon because I can't believe how many times I get, particularly new brokers, in fairness to you guys. Where's the easiest place for me to get my forms if I don't know how to use DocuSign yet? And I always tell people the easiest place to do it is right here on Paragon. And if you just go right on up to resources, if you look all the way down, you'll see where it says Instanet. And if you click on Instanet, guess what's there? All of the forms in the world that you can ask for. And if you go 1, 2, 3, 4 down, I find this is the easiest place to use because right there you can see there's all the forms. And in this case, I just type in purchase. And guess what? It all populates. And you can see everything that relates to purchase. And this is the one that we're going to work on today, the purchase agreement resale. Okay. But I've already got it annotated. The other thing that I talk about a lot on Paragon that makes life a lot easier for you is people are going, well, I'm not really sure the name of the seller, or I don't have information for like their townships and so forth, like their location. If you go right over here to tax and you just go down to like Santa Fe County, in this case, click on Santa Fe County. I'll put in my last name, Trujillo. And right here on street, less is always better. I'll put in my address. And there should be 2 Trujillos there on that street. And if you click on it, it opens it up right there. There's Thomas Trujillo. Click on my thing there. And this will give you information. And I tell people this is always a good place. You know, you go, I really don't know who the seller is. I can't reach the selling broker to tell me who they are. Well, there you go. On that particular street, 1677 Cerro Gordo, there's Thomas P. Trujillo and even my legal description. And the last one that I always start off with, and I always do this just before we get into the contract, just so everybody can get on, is people always ask me about, well, I don't know the other broker's MLS number, or I don't know their QB. So if you just go to membership, go to agent roster, and let's just write in here, Bussy. Okay. Whoa, there's only one William Bussy. You click on it, and lo and behold, there it is, Will Bussy, his phone number. He works for Keller Williams. There's William Bussy's email, and right here, there's his agent license. Hopefully that's right. 47-800. Ooh, what a cool number to have. And if you even like click on this here, there's further more information about it as well. Okay, including there's his office broker. That's me. So when you're filling out your contract, a lot of times, those are those things that always pop up and you kind of go, oh my goodness, I don't know where to find that information. That's just the fastest and quickest way to do it. Quick and dirty. All right. Here it comes, guys. Are you ready? We're going to share this one. And here it is, the latest and greatest revised purchase agreement, resale. And this, if you always go to the bottom, right now it says NMAR form 2104. And it was October 21st that they updated it. So I suspect that more than anything, we'll probably see a minor update, maybe in January, that they seem to do that, because I've already found some flaws on this particular one, but it shouldn't change that much. And as you guys know as well, aside from the fact of going through this class, we record it. I also put it up on my TomTrujilloRealEstate.com after a couple of days when they're all completed. So you have a reference to go to. I always recommend to brokers that aside from just taking notes, you can go back to that incident if you have a few seconds here and just download a copy of the purchase agreement so you can write your own notes on it and so forth. But we're going to jump into stuff. And as I tell you guys, I do 3 purchase agreement classes. We're going to do the first 10 pages today. Next week, we'll do the second 10 pages. And then I will do a summary one. And I do that a lot of times for kind of the veterans who are so used to these contracts, but it never hurts. Believe me, I've been doing this 30 years. And every time that I even go through the new contract, just like that to do class, I'm always amazed on things that I miss that it's always good to hear. So again, if you have questions, just shout it out, guys, and I'll take it from there. So of course, the first few pages is really our broker duties disclosure. And you got to remember, this is not only in terms of the purchase agreement, it's also on the listing agreement, right? So we should all be very, very aware of it. But there's things that I always like to point out, and I highlight initially in yellow, and you'll also see that I highlight in blue, and I'll explain that when we get to a blue one, but it's pretty much the forms. As you guys know, we're trying to really limit it and really kind of narrow down the whole compliance situation. And the reason is that as the new contracts are developed, they actually state if you're working with an HOA, you may need this form. So those are the things that you got to keep your eyes on. We're going to start off with really right section A. All brokers in this transaction owe the following broker duties to all buyers and sellers in this transaction, even if the broker is not representing the buyer or seller in this transaction. And I highlight that only because even though you may be representing the buyer by default, because you're in agreement, you somewhat have that same responsibility to the seller. What I mean by that is when I hear these kind of war stories on occasion that, oh, the seller was there and I told the seller to leave. And man, I've heard some stuff of people being frankly disrespectful to the seller because maybe they were there. Maybe their broker didn't tell them they shouldn't be there. But you got to remember that, that's our responsibility ethically and professionally, is just because they're there, whatever, you don't diss the seller because they're there, as you know. And in reality, all of the duties, you still have to not only look at your buyer, your client, but you got to keep in mind too, of course, that you got to be honest and reasonable care and ethical at all times. You're going to follow the compliance, the law, the performance should be all done in written agreements. This is not HGTV. I love to call that real estate porn. You get those programs on there and, oh, I'm going to call Will real quick and see if he'll accept that offer. Guess what? It's all in written agreements. Now, you may have discussion with the other brokers. That's good. Always be transparent, but don't think you're going to be doing a deal, because I've heard it happen more than once when somebody said, oh, I called the listing broker and he said he was going to wait for me before I sent over the contract. And guess what? By the time I sent it over, he didn't wait for me. He went ahead and they accepted another offer that came in. Believe me, I just heard that 2 days ago. Doesn't mean a doggone thing unless it is a written agreement and it's been signed off by both sides. Okay. Written disclosure has become more and more of an issue, because written disclosure, we've been pushing real hard from that property disclosure that we've had in the past to have that adverse property disclosure. So if you by some chance are even doing a double-ended deal, but you're aware because you have the seller that something is not right with this property, you have a responsibility because you are knowledgeable of that issue as well. And you may be representing both sides of the party. Sometimes the seller doesn't even want you to represent the other side of the party because of issues that they feel, oh man, I think you know way too much about this house than you should. Those are things you have to ask yourself ethically about, of what you're going to communicate and what you're not. Well, maybe in some cases you may say, you know what, I probably really don't want to go here. I'm going to go ahead and refer off the other side of the deal. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay. There it is, the written disclosure of any adverse material facts. Okay. In addition to the above duties, broker owes the following broker duties to the buyers and or seller in this transaction to whom the broker is directly providing real estate services, regardless of the scope and nature of those services. Okay. We'll keep moving through this because this is pretty dry stuff. We all should know this. Timely presentation and response to all written offers and counter offers. That's the deadlines, guys. We know that over and over again. And in other classes, I'm always telling you, as soon as you get that accepted agreement, you put together that calendar of your deadlines, because those deadlines will kill you. And there's a lot of things in here that you're going to start seeing that they have changed in terms of what is a waiver or what is a default. We'll touch a little bit on it. Always, we know we're not lawyers. We're not plumbers. We're not roofers. Stay in your lane. We're brokers. We're transaction brokers. And always advise to consult with an attorney. If it's beyond your scope or they start talking attorney, man, that's when you say, hey, you know what? I'm not an attorney, but you know what? If you feel you need an attorney, I've got 3 or 4 here. Again, don't just give them one, or maybe they have their own attorney, but you never act as an attorney. And it's amazing. We easily slip into that. If all roles, we easily slip into it. I see it more and more in terms of when we get the waivers and objections. I got a call this morning on an individual who said, well, you know, they said my wall was going to be stucco this way. Tom, you know, you've lived here. How is a stucco job supposed to be done? Wow. Now I know how it's supposed to be done, but am I going to stick my neck out there and say, hey, this is the process? You know what? It's really a good idea that you talk to somebody who does stucco. Okay. And I know that a lot of times we really get the push and the pull, and we feel like it's so easy for us to answer those questions because we've been doing it. I mean, again, I'm looking at Will's been doing this a long time. He understands all these houses, how they were built and so forth. He understands all these things. But at the end of the day, what you've always got to put in your mind is you got to stay in your lane, because all you are is the person to get this contract done. And you can provide the resources, more than one, but don't get yourself caught up when they come back later and says, doggone it, Tom told me this is how they should have done a stucco wall. And then you're sitting in front of the guys with the black robes on. Not a fun place. We also know that a responsibility is the prompt accounting of all money received by the brokers. Keller Williams, as many of the brokerages here in Santa Fe, we do not carry a trust account. I do not have a trust account in here. I do not have a safe. That means that check that you are doing for earnest money or any funds goes through the title company. And it's highly recommended that nowadays that you may actually do a wire transfer to have that money go over there, partly because of the COVID issues. Or sometimes it's even say, you know, if you want to do a check, here's the location to go to my to your title closer. They're over here on Paseo de Peralta. Just go on in there. I've got them called. They're expecting you. Try to keep the money out of your hands. I've told you guys that nightmare story of mine way back, 20 some odd years ago. They gave me the earnest money. It was the weekend, blah, blah, blah. Boom. I was real happy about it. Monday, I was going to take that earnest money on over to the brokerage house. Guess what? Couldn't find the check. Man, that's embarrassing when you have to call up your client and says, that earnest money check that you gave me for $5,000, I lost it. I lost it. Fortunately, they were pretty nice people. That means they had to put a stop payment on their check. Probably thought I was some kind of ditz. Ironically, as it turned out, I was pretty upset. And then all of a sudden I went to my car where I put the folder. The check had slid out and gone through the back seat. I found it, called them. Guess what? I found the check, but I still look like an idiot. So in the meantime, anytime that you have kind of money, you want to make sure that it's accounted for at all times. Written disclosure. We basically, there's 3 ways that we still do it. An exclusive agency is what we used to be in the old days. We're an agent. That means we have those fiduciary responsibilities. Okay. We do not do exclusive agency at Keller Williams. We are transaction brokers. Now, in the event, because you get a lot of times people from the East who are very, very accustomed of having somebody that is agency with them. They don't even, what is this? We don't even understand this transaction. There are times that if you cannot explain it and you have to go agency, and understand that whole story about agency, not only do you assume their responsibilities, they also assume your responsibilities. Okay. If you have to go there, please contact me, because that is something that I always like to coach people on as such. Gave you the war story real quick. Way back in the days of Quail Run for me. There was one broker up there that did agency, and he wouldn't change. And we're sitting one day and out on this patio having some iced tea. And he started telling me about this property and blah, 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 blah. And he said, yeah, I know they'll take this much money for it. Cool. Well, 2 days later, I got a buyer. And I made the offer exactly what he said he knew they'd take the money for. And when he says, oh, no, Tom, we can't take it. No, hold on. You told me this is what your client was taking. Are you not representing them as an agent? Yes, I am. Well, you're speaking for them. He wasn't a happy boy. That's what can happen to you. You can flip the other side as well with agency, is all of a sudden someone is speaking on your behalf with something maybe you said. So the state of New Mexico, like many states, have moved away from agency. It's still out there, but in this case, we stay away with it. We're transaction brokers. Dual agency, same scenario. That's still taken on agency. That doesn't mean that you can't do a double-ended deal. We do a lot of those, but we'll get further down the road on how you do that, how you disclose it. But at this point, there you are. Transaction broker, the non-fiduciary relationships created by law, wherein a brokerage provides real estate services without entering into an agency relationship. Okay. Oh, well, we'll keep on moving down. Authorized in writing the various items, unless authorized in writing, the broker who is directly providing real estate services to a buyer shall not disclose the following to the seller. And it goes both sides. We know that, right? You know, keep your mouth zipped. In worst case, if you are doing a dual-ended deal, man, you really got to keep it zipped. All you there are therefore as the facilitator. And even though they may have told you, hey, you know what, Ted, we'll take a little less for the money. Don't go there. Just be careful with that. And one of the reasons, again, a lot of times I'll, in particular in teams, I'm always looking at teams going, hey, you handle one side, you handle the other side. But that's not always the case. And as a good broker, you should be able to communicate that you're a transaction coordinator. So if there's things that you do not, transaction broker, if you do not want me to know, please don't tell me, because I very much may land up having both sides of the deal. And I work hard to doing that, because you know what, as Ray Rice says, I want to make that 7%, and I'm going to do such a good job. I'm going to find both sides of the deal for you. Okay. But these are the things in the contract that you have to be careful of. Always get initials. That's the compliance ones. If you want to save yourself a lot of headaches, you know, I actually go, and if I'm doing it wet, I make sure that I highlight the side I'm doing. So I'm going through there, and, you know, try to get as much of your contract completed as you possibly can, so you're not scrambling in the very end and you're not meeting the deadlines for compliance. Okie dokie, here we go. Simple things. I provide this this annotated copy upon request after the class, and it's a good one. I know a lot of the newer brokers and some of the old guys still keep a notebook. I keep a notebook of all the old annotated ones. So you'll see sometimes double checks and so forth. So you got to be aware of what we're talking about during the class itself. Of course, broker relationship, the buying broker, your name, not Tom Trio, not Keller Williams. And these slip by because they've changed over the years. At one time, it used to say brokerage relationship. It was Keller Williams. Now it says, there it is, your name, buyer's broker, boom, boom, is working with transaction coordinator. With, you'll see I have a yellow or a little red check mark. If you're doing a transaction, try, if you can, to get a buyer's broker agreement. It's highly recommended. Not everybody does them. There's times I haven't done them, but in this market right now, we're seeing more and more of this, of, you know, the loyalty is pretty thin out there these days. So if you have that opportunity to get a buyer's broker agreement, tell them and say, you know, this is how I make a living. You know, I'm willing to do anything you guys need me to do, but I do need to have a little skin in the game. At this point, all I'm looking for is your signature to say you're working with me. Because we all know that when we do open houses, when it's the first question we ask that person who walks in, hey, are you working with anybody? And how many times have I seen brokers with a very sad face? Wow, I can't believe it. They went out on Sunday to look at houses. And when I called them on Monday to say, hey, did you see anything? They turn around and say, yeah, man, we were working with Darlene. She had a great open house. Darlene, good buddy, and she signed us right then and there. We're under contract. What? What? And then I get to be that person in the middle going, hey, Ted, did you have a buyer's broker agreement? No, I didn't. Okay. So in this day and age, since there's so little inventory, and we know the pressure is on all of us right now, try to get that buyer's broker agreement in there. You guys have heard me talk many times about doing my vampire cards. And that's just a little envelope that says vampire cards. And all they are my business cards that I give my clients and say, if you're going to go out and without me, or you're going to go out on a Saturday or whatever day to see an open house, just hand one of these vampire cards to that vamp. It's simple as that. You can make some fun with that and so forth like that. But right then and there, you've given notice to that other broker that they are working with you. Okay. Another one here, this, when you go into this in-house stuff, this is it. You can see it says no dual agency created. So hypothetically, I'll pick on Will because I can see his face the easiest. Will, he's got a property. I'm going to show it. And now you're going to write a purchase agreement. They go, well, he's a killer with him. So it's a check mark. Buyer's broker is licensed and the same qualified broker. Okay. And so that's pretty simple to check. You can also go in here and says, number 2, buyer's broker is also seller's broker for a property in the transaction. Buyer's broker has a written listing agreement with the seller as hopefully transaction broker, right? All that means that's your double-ended there. All you're doing is giving notice that the buyer's broker is also the seller's broker. Okay. That's your double ending right there. And you could say brokerage is representing both buyer and seller. Simple. So a lot of times these are very easy to do. It's you just got to read through them a little bit. And that's where we as brokers have a tendency, we go, oh, this is the same as it was the last time. Take your time, read through it. Nothing, and it's better to do it up front than it is in taking these classes. Then when you're out there on Saturday, man, they want a contract in the next 45 minutes and you're not briefed on it. Okay. Dual agency, you can see at this point, I've scratched it out. And it only comes because of the fact that we do not do agency. But if you get in a position like that, please come and see me. All right. Additional disclosures. We all know that buyer broker has ownership in the interest. Buyer broker has conflict of interest or material, business, personal or family. And how deep does that go? I'm always careful with that because, man, I got family all over the state of New Mexico. And how deep do they go? After my 3rd or 4th generation down, hell, I don't know them. But, try to disclose what you can. Oh, that was my ex-wife. Well, you might want to disclose it. And, well, he's a friend of mine. We as brokers, we got a lot of friends, but they may not be like the bestie friends, but you represent them as friends. But use your discretion on that. If you feel that there is some potential of somebody ever coming back at you and say, well, man, they never disclosed that they were married together at one time or another, use your discretion on that. All right. And buyer's broker is engaged in a transaction coordinator. That's a Paula. Okay. So if you're going to use a TC, put her name. I always recommend putting their license number right with them. Okay. Same thing happens on the seller side. Name of the listing broker. He's a transaction broker, with a written listing. Same thing with additional disclosure. He also may have a TC. And that's where that conversation comes in a lot of times, because you may have that conversation and say, hey, Ted, I'm going to put an offer on your property over there, buddy. And I just want to let you know, by any chance, do you use a TC as well? That can be left blank because you can always come back, or more than likely, if a counter offer comes back, the selling broker is going to name their TC and hopefully their license as well. Okay. Any questions so far? All righty. Transactions coordinators, of course, are licensed in the state of New Mexico. And the overall key factor of them, of overseeing and organizing the contract, the most important thing you have to remember, you can only use a TC that hangs their license with your QB. Okay. With the exception of a qualifying broker TC. Example, if a lot of times you might be working with somebody out of Albuquerque, and if your license hangs with me, but you want to use TC services and TC down there, you cannot, because they're not hanging with me. Okay. So in the case of Paula, for example, she got her qualifying broker's license. That allows her to not only TC for us here in our office, she can TC for the offices in Albuquerque or Silver City or wherever she wants, if you have that relationship with her, because she's a QB. But if you're going to just try to say, well, I want to use this person, you know, they're great. I've heard about them. They work independently as TCs. Well, is their license hanging under Tom's? No. Second question, are you a QB? Yes. Okay, cool. You can use them. All right. Okay, there you go. Fun stuff. Buyer's broker name, your license number. There's your QB. If you're out of this office, there's my number, 20394, blah, 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 your information. We really push hard for you guys to make sure you're putting your emails and your phone numbers there. Stuff happens in life, and sometimes compliance officers or brokers, QBs, have to pick up the ball and run. We don't have this information. Wow. Sometimes it's hard. We can't get a hold of you. Same thing on your listing broker. I showed you how to use that. You can find a Paragon membership and roster, their number as well. So that's why I give you that quick little tutorial up front on how you find it in Paragon. Okay. So that's just the broker's duties. Now we get to get into the fun one. Woohoo! This is the one everybody likes. Parties and agreements. Here's the actual residential resale agreement for a PA. The name of the buyers. I always make a point of communicating to the buyers, how do you take your professional documents? And the reason I do that, because, for example, Tom and Leonora Trujillo, that's our names, but my professional documents are Thomas P. and M. Leonora Trujillo. Everything that we do professionally is that way because that's our given names. So it's always wiser to say, hey, right up front, because otherwise down the road, you're now talking to title, you're now doing amendments, you're now doing all kinds of things that, you know, if you just would have gotten it up front, it's a great way to get going. Same thing with your seller. If your broker doesn't give you the name, if the listing broker doesn't tell you the name, at least go to Paragon and look up their tax records. Same way as we talked about a little earlier. Start your contract clean and you'll end it clean. Okay. So for sake of this conversation, we're going to say that we're going to do this contract with a signing and settlement date of February 15th, 2022. Oh, good. I thought I put 21 on there earlier. All right. So there's ways of taking this thing. You know, the buyers may be Mr. or Mrs. Trujillo. Another one that happens, and we hear about this, people buy things as a living trust with so-and-so's name as trustee. They buy it as an LLC. However they do their professional real estate documents is how you want to do it. Another thing that happens on occasion, this happened to me, was sold and separate. In the state of New Mexico, because we're a community state, I can't just go out and buy a piece of property and only put it in my name, unless I have a sole and separate agreement that is signed off by my wife and hence maybe the lender is going to require it as well. So that goes to the title people. As you can see, if a buyer or seller is married and a sole and separate agreement is required by the title company and or lender, the applicable parties shall deliver or cause to be delivered a sole and separate agreement to the title company identified in paragraph 5. And, you know, they're pretty good with whatever the legal agreement that you have. They may need to have it notarized and so forth, but they're going to want my wife's signature on it, that I'm not out there buying myself some sugar shack somewhere that she doesn't know about. All right. And there's deadlines on it as well. Purchase price. It's really kind of funny because of the way things have gone. The last one I did was, I think, last April, and we were still in the $400,000 and $500,000 properties. And I go, oh man, we don't even have those anymore. We better jump out there and mark it up to what we're used to. So this purchase price on this particular property is going to be $895,000. And I did something a little different. You certainly can always put cash down. Let's say that you are going to do this as a loan. You might have put $50,000 down, or maybe even $100,000 down, leaving you a balance of $795,000. I want you to be careful with that these days, because it also gives sometimes the seller the advantage of knowing you got cash. So all of a sudden, they're sitting there and they go, well, you know, maybe we're not going to respond so easily to all those objections when we go through the inspections. Just food for thought. Doesn't mean you can't, but all of a sudden when you show them you've got, you know, cash to back up your deal, sometimes it could hurt you. Just something to think about. So they have actually, over the years, in the old days, I used to always put to be determined by lender, to be determined by lender. And guess what? As time has gone on, they actually have now a check mark, to be determined by lender or to be determined by lender. Basically, you're buying that property. They're not, the buyer, excuse me, the seller is not aware of what kind of money or loan you're going to be taking out. Off market. Off market is off market. And that means the date of acceptance, the seller shall take the property off the market unless terminated. So if you are in an agreement with somebody, if you have a deal going on with Lexa and she's the seller, and all of a sudden, you know, you guys have got an agreement on it, and you look in the MLS, you're looking in the MLS, and it still says active. No. You're calling up that other broker and says, hey man, we're under contract. It needs to be pending or pending, please show. Sometimes and always be nice. I tell that to people, you know, always be nice, because, you know, they got busy. They forgot. Oh man, I forgot to do it, Tom. I'm sorry. Not a problem. Okay. But it's off the market until. Now, that doesn't mean that while off the market, the seller shall not accept. Okay. You can read it. Let's go through it. Date of acceptance, seller shall take the property off the market until termination of the agreement or default by buyer, which is not waived by the seller, whichever occurs first. Off market. While off market, seller shall not accept any offer to sell the property except backup offer. So they can still accept them, but as long as you are going down the lane, that property's off market. You're first in that position. In this market that we see now, we're seeing a lot of backup offers, and it's tough. It's tough to keep your buyer sometimes in check and staying focused on that, because a lot of times the sellers, man, the worst thing in the world, and some of you may have already experienced this, is that you got the deal, you're going down the lane and so forth, and then lo and behold, they got a backup offer for $50,000, $60,000 more than you offered. So it is really important to keep the thing on track, that your sellers are trying to make sure it goes through, because once they step off the Ferris wheel, it's over. They start missing deadlines. They start defaulting. The next thing you know is they're saying, no problem. See you later. Claudia, it was great working with you, but guess what? Ray's got a backup offer. See ya. Bye. Love you. Bye-bye. So those are the things you got to kind of keep your eyes open on. The Tom fee, I'm not going to beat up too much. We're not seeing a lot of them yet in Santa Fe. There's quite a few more in the Albuquerque market, but the Tom fee is only if the buyer will be compensating the seller for taking the property off the market. What's the benefit of it? If you had all your plumbers, roofers, electricians, all the people that you know to look at a house available to you, and you had a buyer who came in and says, we really just don't want to go under contract. We're willing to give $5,000 or $1,000 to the seller so we can take a quick look at this property, see if we like it. And who do you have to look at all this stuff? Man, it's a great way to go. Nobody gets caught up. The problem that we have right now in Santa Fe is trying to find all those tradesmen who can take a look that quickly and get it done. Because in the event of closing, the tom fee, okay, number one, that's just money on the table. But if in the event of closing, tom fees shall not be refunded to the buyer or applied to a purchase price, down payment, or closing costs. The tom fee is off the table for any of that. All that means is that you just wrote a check for $1,000 to get it off the market quickly, to take a look at it, but it's not part of the settlement amount. Okay. And I've had a lot of brokers come back to me and saying, oh, they really wanted to use that tom fee against their, against their escrow. Well, that's not what it's designed for. So if you get in a tom fee and you're having confusion about it, give me a call and we'll talk through it again. Okay. Earnest money, scratching the game. Buyer shall deliver. In this case, I said $25,000 earnest money in the form of a check, cash, wire transfer to the title company, no later than 3 days of acceptance. All right. The old rule used to be 2 to 3% of the offer. Nothing's in stone. And I precaution people not to get overzealous with their earnest money, because when all of a sudden you have a $25,000 earnest money on the table, those are the ones that people are willing to fight for. Now, if you're buying a multi-million-dollar house, get it, because people with multi-million-dollar houses don't look at $25,000 than the guy who's buying a $600,000 or $700,000 house. $25,000 looks like a lot. So any slip up on your part as the buyer's broker, you miss deadlines or whatever it may be, man, that's the first thing they go after. And I'm sure Ray's sick and tired of me talking all day long of how many disputes that I'm dealing with because of earnest money. And we'll get a little further into it in a few minutes. The real trick with this is when you are doing an agreement with an individual, you really want to talk to them about earnest money and what it's all about. And, when you're unfortunately, when you're on the listing side, it's even more important to communicate to your seller about that earnest money. This is not just free money out there. So have a very, very, very hard discussion with your buyer on it. Other thing that's coming in here, because I hear this all the time, we put the offer on the house and they're supposed to have the earnest money already at the title company and they haven't done it. Are we done? Can we just say, hey, we're walking away from you? Very important clause. Buyer's failure to timely deliver the earnest money shall be considered a default of this agreement. That doesn't mean that the thing is dead. It means the contract's in default. All right. That's where you'll have to review section 37, the default notice, opportunity to cure. I don't know how many people are looking at it, but you're going to see more and more of it. I'm going to switch over to this real quick. Yeah, here it is. This is what it reads. All the way down to number 37. Deadline defaults. In the event a party fails to perform by a specific timeline, the non-defaulting party shall provide notice to the defaulting party of the nature and extent of the deadline default notice, form 2112, notification of deadline, default and opportunity to cure. The defaulting party shall have 2 days from the receipt of. So if they have defaulted on their earnest money, you get that sucker out. They got 2 days to get that thing to you. Now, if they don't, that's where you've given them notice. The non-defaulting party may retain the earnest money. So unfortunately, many brokers have not kept up with this new scenario here in the purchase agreement. They just immediately say, hey, we're going to go after the, well, if they have no earnest money there, wow. So you're going to be able to walk away from the deal. But it's real key that you'll see this throughout the word default, that you go to that defaulting form. Here's what it looks like, just so you guys can see it. Jump into it. New Mexico Association of Realtors notification of default. Seller, buyer, the property purchase agreement dated. Buyer hereby notified, or the seller hereby notified about the defaulted obligation imposed by the purchase agreement. Default under, you put the paragraph, the purchase agreement, blah, 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 blah. So those are ones. And again, when you get my notifications, read that, because it's coming back. And that pertains to throughout the contract that they're in default. That doesn't mean the contract void. They're just in default. Okay, here we go. How fun is this? Let me get a drink of water. Are we all understanding so far? We're moving along. I'm looking at Claudia. Claudia's giving me, okay, here we go. Here we go. We're going to keep moving down here because time is of the essence. Again, the description, we talked about that. The address, boom, legal description. I told you where to find that. Here's another favorite one of mine is, where do I find the location code for the taxes? Oh my God. I get that call at least 5 times during a week. It's very simple. Go to Paragon, go to resources, GRT tax code. And all that is the gross receipts tax to wherever you're selling the property. If you're in Santa Fe proper, it's right there. 01123, 8.437% gross receipts tax. If you're in Los Alamos or if you're in Rio Arriba, it has a complete sheet of all the codes that you should do. And I should have handed it here. I actually printed one out. I highly recommend you do the same thing. Go there and print out the tax codes. Okay. I did this one for my good friend Amy Rice because she's done such a beautiful job with it. Is that when you go in here, the type of property you're selling, there's a site built, meaning a regular house, a manufactured house, a modular or an offsite or other. And here again is one of these blue ones, NMAR form information sheets. Too often, because we're always in a hurry, we don't use enough of our information sheets. There's nothing better than to CYA with some of these information sheets. Yes. Oh, here's the information sheet on manufactured housing. This is what it means, buyer. So when it comes back later and they said, wow, we didn't realize that that house was made off site. Well, you should have, because you initialed off on this manufacturing information sheet. And I have that in my compliance because it comes back to you. And there's many like that. All right. I always like going down here to the fixtures, appliances, personal property, pretty much all the same stuff. I highlighted my favorites of fixtures. Basically, the best thing to always remember with a fixture, if they take it off the wall and there's a hole that you have to repair, chances are it was a fixture. If they got to go off go up on the roof and rip out some kind of system up there and it left a big hole in the roof, chances are it was a fixture. All right. But there are other things in here that people sometimes don't realize, all right, that sometimes the attached fireplace grade is a fixture. It's bolted in. So if you were to unbolt it, guess what? You have holes to fix. Window coverings, those are the rods, all right? Those rods, you take them off, wow, there's big holes there. They should have left those rods there. This doesn't include the curtains, and it doesn't include, what do they call those? Tension rods. We got a complaint not long ago, Ray and I, that the buyer was very unhappy because when they went to the house, the curtain was gone off the wall or wherever it was above the curtain line. And fortunately, the broker said, hey, I took a picture of that and it was a tension rod. That's personal property. They can take it. It wasn't permanently attached. No holes in the wall. Same thing with Murphy beds. Now they have to include the mattress. Vacuum cleaner, central vacs. When you start getting some of the upper dollar demographic properties, you see that there's a vacuum there. Make sure that there's hoses, because otherwise, like your good friend Tom here, I bought a couple hoses up there at Quail Run that, they bought the vac. Where's the Quail Run? Where's the hoses? Oh, it's on their way to Amarillo. Oh, great. Thanks a lot. We didn't know. Same thing with solar power. Keep an eye on that. A lot of times people have solar power. They may have actually a lien against it. They may be leased. So it's a whole new scenario you get there. TV antennas, satellite dishes. A lot of times the satellite dishes are actually owned by the company, so just left up there till the next company. But TV antennas are beginning to be an issue because, people are being able to cut the cord. They get TV from Sandia Crest and they're gone now. Well, it was there when we looked at the house. My favorite is TV wall mounts. That is a fixture. The TV isn't, but the wall mount is. So if your people have one of these flat screens on the wall like I do, and it's bolted into the thing, say, are you planning to leave the TV mount? Oh, no, it fits my TV. Well, do me a favor, take it out now, fix the holes before we start showing the house. That's the benefit of having waivers, because in many respects, get it done before people are going to start seeing it. And as I've always said, if it's grandma's chandelier that you love in your dining room and you want to keep it, well, go to Home Depot and buy another one and get it back. Why give yourself that aggravation or headache? Or even worse, photographed that you've sent your photographer out there and there's grandma's chandelier hanging in there and it's on the web. They go and buy it. Well, where's grandma's chandelier now? It's on its way to Lubbock. Okay, there we go.
Good question.
Yeah.
Ray has his hand up.
Yeah, Ray.
So no, I like the definition of if it leaves a hole, that is most likely a fixture. What are there any examples of something that would be a fixture that doesn't leave a hole?
I can't think of one off the top of my head. Anybody else think of one? Bussy?
Yeah, you got me stumped on that one too.
9 times out of 10, if it's permanent, that's a fixture. If it's something that like the tension rod's a good example. And of course, you and I were dealing with that with the broker. That wasn't permanent, but in the mind of the buyer, they saw those curtains up there. They saw the curtain rod. And in truth, they were thinking, well, if it had been me, I'd have just left the doggone tension rod and just say, forget it, because those are pretty cheap. But if it's removable without damaging anything, it's pretty much personal property.
That's a great definition then.
Okay, so let's just keep thinking. But anybody think of one, let me know. That's a good question.
I'm closing hey, Tom.
Yeah.
I'm closing a deal in a few hours that I represented both the buyer and the seller on, and we had an exclusion list because the house was being sold mostly furnished. There was just a few things that the seller was taking, and that was really helpful because it just kept everything super clear.
Keep it clean. If you get caught up in, was that Ariana?
Yeah.
If you get caught up in those things that you're actually selling the furniture in there, man, make sure you have a good list of what's going to go and what's not going to go.
Yeah, and we had pictures, and it was part of, it was just super clear so that there would be no confusion.
Beautiful.
It made it really simple.
Beautiful. All right, personal property, we know that's where it gets a little different. Unattached window coverings, right? I always highlight that one because, what are window blinds? Well, guess what? Window blinds are bolted into the, like the Venetian blinds or the screen, we have those all over our house. Those are bolted into the frame. And I know that even though I can pull the little clips and take the blind off, the brackets are there, but really be careful. Decorative mirrors above both vanities, another great one. In Santa Fe, people will go out and they'll buy some art that is beautiful mirrored. Maybe it's tiled or tinsmith wood. And we take photographs of that and so forth. I went through a big one with that and it was in the photographs. And when the people bought the house, well, where did my mirror go? Well, oh, that was personal property. Man, if you have a decorative mirror above it and you want to keep it, get it out. Go to Home Depot and put another one there. Same thing, simple stuff. The appliances themselves. I purposely highlighted the kitchen refrigerator because they also put the S behind it, meaning it's plural. So if you have a kitchen refrigerator per se, as I do in my garage, that I put all my cold beer and stuff in, chill my wine in, and I check that I'm selling the kitchen refrigerators and they show up and only refrigerators in my kitchen, they're going to turn around and say, where's the one in the garage? Oh, no, that's a kitchen refrigerator. It's those kind of things that can bite you. I purposely put in this one as well, hot tub. This particular listing, or these people are saying, hey, they want to buy the hot tub or whatever, or maybe the listing said there's a hot tub. All right. So boom, they want to buy it. It may or may not be part of the sale because you can move it. Yeah.
What about artwork on the wall?
Artwork is removable and normally considered personal property unless it is actually identified. Large art piece in dining room. They can put it in there. They may put it in their listing that all art will convey. Okay, but make sure that's, if it can be taken off, the nail can stay there, and you may have to repair the nail hole, but the art is considered personal property. Okay.
It's pretty common practice to leave the refrigerators right here.
Yeah, pretty common. Most properties in Santa Fe are built-in kind of equipment, but it's even the houses that don't have it built in. 9 times out of 10, in that listing agreement that you're going to look at on the other side, you're going to see that the same list or something similar is going to say, hey, the refrigerator stand, the freezer stand, the washer dryer stand. You want to make sure, as the buyer on the purchase side, if they're in the listing agreement, you want to make sure check. And if you want to keep that hot tub in there, you're going to say, oh yeah, you said you were going to sell the hot tub too. Boom. Or maybe the hot tub isn't in there, but you want it anyway. You're going to check it. Now that might be a lot of times, unfortunately, the listing broker may not see it checked, but guess what? You checked it. And if they signed off on it, you bought their hot tub.
I would say definitely if you're working with out of state buyers, make sure that's clear, because in Texas, we didn't do that at all. Everyone pretty much took their refrigerators.
Yeah. So there you go. That's good comparison. Thank you, Ray. Because
A
those
lot
are
of home
things,
warranty ones, Tom. Remember when the purchase agreement was staggered weird and the check boxes in the wrong, and I just missed it. $500 it cost me. So
for home warranty.
yep.
Yeah.
I was, representing the seller and I just missed it. They checked buyer, and the way it, it was like 3 years ago, and that purchase agreement was a little weird for a while.
Yeah.
There you go. It happens.
So read and reread. Here we go. This is
Ask a question, please.
yes.
What about so back to refrigerators and stuff like that? What about like a large, very heavy fountain in a courtyard, or like large, very heavy stone furniture that is not affixed, but it's very heavy? What about stuff like that?
Well, I think when you start getting even in some of this outdoor sculpture, and like stones can be outdoor sculpture, normally within the listing agreement, it says, all stones, all outdoor, all stone benches do not convey. But if it's something your buyer wants, you can just make that little check right here, check mark other large stones in yard, or heavy benches that appear to be a fixture. If it's not there, cover your CYA, because the reality is you don't want to have a fight and dispute about it after the fact. When the listing broker says, "What, you crazy, Robert? Those rocks were part of art. We're not going to let you have it." But I've seen that. I can recall that these clients of mine, they had these bronze reindeer in their house, at their house. I mean, full size. And that was the one thing that when I went out and we're kind of surveying, and it said, it looks like art that's permanently mounted there. No, they says, we're taking them with us. I said, you know what? I want you to do me a bigger favor. Take them out now. He was a contractor guy, so he could remove them. I said, take them right out now and put them in storage, because I don't want to have to be fighting over what appears to be a permanent fixture type thing. So it's your responsibility when you're on that listing side to also say, these are the things, guys, that you need to pay attention to. Okay. Let's keep going. Here's the greatest and probably the most important thing that has come up on the new purchase agreement. And this is what I call the bait and switch one. You've heard me say it many, many times. So they now have, here we go. Buyers shall not change any of the following without the seller's approval. That means the means of payment, cash, loan, or seller financing, the lender identified in the pre-qual letter, or the loan program type identified in the pre-qual letter. Upon seller's approval, the party shall execute an amendment to this agreement that sets forth the change in address and the disposition of earnest money should buyer be unable to close as a result of the change in the payment type, lender, or loan program. If the earnest money disposition is not addressed in the amendment, earnest money shall be refunded to the buyer in all circumstances except the following. Buyers changed the loan and did not provide a rejection letter as defined in paragraph blah, blah, blah. What that one is, we've seen it. I've had it happen to me. Let's see, somebody else was working on, I think it was Jasmine was working on a deal. We're buying this cash. We're buying this cash. We're buying this cash. So you're going through the entire agreement with the understanding of cash. 3 or 4, a week or two before you're ready to close, they go, oh, guess what? We decided to get a loan. Really? Most times the title company says, we don't care. The problem that lies with that is the kind of impact it has on your buyer, or excuse me, on the seller. Because all of a sudden your buyer says, I'm buying this cash, I'm buying this cash. And then we're 3 days down and they probably have the money and they're looking and saying, God, why am I buying this cash when I can get a 3% loan on this thing? The problem is it's changed the complexity of the entire agreement. So they have really highlighted this, that when you're talking to your buyer and you start saying, let's go ahead and tell them we got cash in the bank to do this right now anyway. But we'll work on this and then we'll go and change it to loan. Where the conflict and the rub comes is there are many times that you have 4 or 5, the seller has 4 or 5 purchase agreements in front of them. They see the one for cash. They see the next 2, maybe with loan, maybe $10,000 or $20,000 more than the cash offer. Okay. All the way down. But all of a sudden, the guy who says cash, they go, wow, check his out, because his says, we don't even need an appraisal because we're doing it cash. Maybe these other people says, we're willing to take the loan, the house is clean, we don't need to do an inspection. But they chose the cash deal. Week before it's ready to close, maybe 2 weeks before it's ready to close, they go, tilt, we're going to now go to a loan. And the loan officer says, even though we have the money, the loan officer says, we still got to get an appraisal. It changed the complexity of the loan. And where it's more than anything, even if they have the money and you are begrudgingly agree to say, yeah, we'll do it on the amendment, I am seeing a lot of angry sellers who went down this path because they're going, man, we got the old bait and switch on us. And the person who's taking the hit is you, the broker. Now, that doesn't preclude the fact, understand this. It doesn't preclude the fact that if they're on the up and up and they're really going to go and get a loan for it, man, the rest of it better match. In other words, I've had it happen that all of a sudden it says, we don't care. We got cheap money. And even though the loan officer says we got to do the appraisal, we don't care. We're going to pay whatever it is over the amount of the appraisal. Those are the comfort zones for your buyer. But too often, man, people start really getting squirrely. So that's why Ashley's now put this in there, is you make it very clear to your buyer, hey, if you're going to go into this game plan cash, then do that. It's trying to level the field. Because if you come across as, yeah, we're going to go in cash and then we're going to change it up for loan, you're going to have a really angry seller on it. And they're going to be looking for ways of getting out of the deal. This gives them that ability now that they are saying, you know what, if you want to change the deal, we need to have a mutual signed agreement. And it's possible that your seller, the seller could be upset with the fact of saying, we don't like this bait and switch feel that we had. And we have a backup offer for another $20,000 and we're willing to stick it out for the loan period of them. Goodbye. We're done. So of all the contract that I've seen in the changes, this is the biggest one here is attention buyer. And now it falls on us as the brokers to really explain to the buyers what this means and how that ramification can affect them. Questions on that one? Okay, good. We're going to crank through the rest of this real quick. Same thing with, go ahead.
Question, please. I'm sorry. A cash purchase, and then there's a readily available contingent on the closing. And so if they check off other stocks, retirement fund, 401k, does that inherently mean that they must liquidate?
Not
the stock?
necessarily. All that means is the buyer shall purchase the subject property and certifies that funds are readily available, that they are contingent on closing the property, or that they have stocks and retirements and funds. You know, whatever they put there, they're basically saying, if need be, we're going to cash in our 401k, or we're going to cash in our stocks. All that is verifying to the buyer, hey, buyer, we have this money available. You know, I think the other is probably more the exception, Robert, than the rule. You know, because my good friend Ray Rice has a beautiful motorcycle. You know, he may want to put it there as under, I'm gonna, if things go bad, guys, you can have my bike. Yeah, she's not gonna do that. All right. So be careful with that. I put it in there more as an example of things that people do put in that they have readily available for them to make the deal.
Okay, and so would the broker be responsible for verifying that the stocks were cashed in or what have you?
No, we are not responsible for any of that variability. Now, the seller may say, well, you need to show us, you know, some kind of proof that you have the stocks and you have a retirement fund. But I would, again, unless you're sophisticated enough to really work with a buyer who says that, man, you're going to really be saying, you know what? If you don't have the readily cash available and you're looking at your stocks and bonds and so forth, they're going to want to see some verification. If I was on the other side of this deal, I'd be wanting to see your portfolio. Okay. Let's keep on rolling. Same thing with loans, guys. We know this. We basically have the conventional FHA, VA, New Mexico Finance Authority. Key here is application. Strongest one we all know is that if you're going to put a loan or you're going to put an offer on, the buyer has made written application for a loan. You're going to be a lot stronger on that than if you would check the box, shall make written application. And in this market, you want the strongest possible contract you can put together. So if it's between someone who has made the written application and someone who's just writing, I'm going to pick that guy all day long who's already got the written application. Okay. This is also an excellent good time if the offer is accepted to have that discussion with the lender. Say, okay, lender, we got this under contract. Where are we at? What are we doing? How we gotten this? Is they're going to make it? Because too often you got to push sometimes. Man, they're waiting to the very end. You've heard all these nightmares going on with underwriters and so forth like that. Take it upon yourself to get that conversation going early in the race. Okay. Pre-qual letter, they're okay. Not the greatest, but they're the pre-qual letter saying, you know, Tom Trio has the ability to do this. All right. Failure to deliver a pre-qual letter to the seller within the time frame stipulated shall be considered a default of the agreement. There you go again, just like the earnest money. Look at that 37. There's no harm done up front if you can get it done. But I have seen some of our brokers come to me and says, man, I haven't got a pre-qual letter. The first question I have you sent them a default letter? No. Well, look it up. Get it out there because you can slam this thing in 2 days. Okay. We're getting behind schedule, so we got to roll. Seller financing. If you're getting caught up in seller financing, make sure you're taking classes and have an understanding of seller financing. new brokers who come in here and say, I've got somebody who wants to buy a house, but they're looking for somebody to sell or finance. Guys, you have to spend some time and get some years of experience of how to do that. Not saying it can't be done, but I am saying you better be knowledgeable about what you are offering to these people. And again, in highlighted in blue, there's all those forms that you should be studying along the way. Here's what that Robert just asked this question. Attention seller, broker is not responsible for verifying authenticity and veracity of the pre-qual or proof of funds letter or determining the buyer's creditworthiness. We're off the hook. We're off the hook. Doesn't mean that you just take anything they offer you, you know, be professional and say, this isn't going to cut it. I love these letters of verification that they give me oh, here's my bank statement. I just took a screenshot. That is not verification of funds. Because I can show you in my savings account today, I got $100,000, right? I can make a screenshot, give it to you, Will. Here you go, Will. I got 100 grand. Then I'm going to go out and buy myself a new truck, 65,000, boom, that money's gone. It's from the bank that you want that with their letterhead on it. Same thing goes with contingencies. These are a lot of fun. If you got a buyer in this day and age who wants to buy a house, contingent on them selling their house somewhere else, good luck. And particularly if it hasn't even been it's not put on the market. It's a different story. If they come in there and says, hey, we want to buy this house contingent on our funds, but I'll tell you what, guys, it's already under contract. That's a stronger offer because that means it's under contract. When's it going to close? It's going to close next week. Everything's looking good. All our contingencies are cleared on that. Whole different story. Again, 2 spots you can check: is currently under contract or is not under contract. You get into that whole contingency of the house, buying something before their sales, check those forms out. That's your greatest education, is just looking at all these blue ones. Because if you look at those blue ones, it explains to you, oh, I see what they mean, that it's not under contract yet. Same thing on appraisal contingency. We know this one, you know, if it's going to be a lender, there's going to be an appraisal on it. What if it doesn't appraise? In the event the appraised value is less than the purchase price, buyer shall deliver a copy of the appraisal to the seller. Buyer shall have 5 days from delivery of the copy to the seller. Notifying the seller in the writing that the election to proceed with the agreement, regardless. We don't care. It didn't appraise. That's okay. We're seeing a lot of that. Or negotiate a new price. You know what? It's $20,000 off. Our agreement didn't say that we're going to waive it. So, you know, you want to sell it to me for $20,000 less? Or lastly, you know what? We don't care. We're walking away. We're done. Square footage, we're off the hook on square footage. Appraisal contingent does not allow termination based on discrepancy between the representation and assumption of the square footage. So we see a lot of that in Santa Fe, and people that are coming into this market don't understand that, and they want to hang you. The broker says, well, wait a minute, the listing agreement said it was 2,100 square feet, but the appraiser went out there and he measured it and it was only at 21. It was only at 2,000 square feet. Where did the 100 square feet go? If it's of, and you'll see it a lot on the listings, if it's of material interest of that buyer, please go have someone measure it. But they no longer can hang that on us and saying, hey, Amy, you misrepresented us because if the listing agreement said it was 2,100 and only measured at 2,000. But all these things highlighted and all these things are bold. This is your time as that buying broker to explain it to these people. And where we get in trouble, 9 times out of 10, the ones I hear about are the ones who are just sending the contract to them, getting an electronic sign, never have a conversation of what the contract says. That's when I hear about it. But those brokers who are explaining, hey, let me explain to you about square footage, how it really works. They get it. Did your broker explain that to them? I'll tell them on the phone. Yes, he did. Okay. What would you like me to do? Can you put the extra 100 square foot somewhere else, Tom? No. And what they're thinking is, I'm going to get it for less because I bought this house assuming it was at 2,100 square feet. And then when they measured it was only 2,000. So I should have to pay less and it costs XYZ per square foot. I should be able to discount it off. That's really what they're shooting. But if you explain it, you won't have those problems. kind of repeat. Possession date, we all know basically possession date is when all funds and all items are recorded with the seller. With the title company records everything with the county clerk. That's possession date.
Tom, I have a quick question on that one.
Yeah.
Why hasn't Ashley actually put in recording? I mean, there is that gray area, and we once or twice a year, I'd always seen, you close on a Friday because it's been delayed. You never try to close on a Friday, obviously, but it happens. And then, they want the keys, but it didn't record. Happened at 4:30 because the funds are delayed. And I won't give the keys up. I just won't until it records. It's a tough one.
Yeah, there is an item in here somewhere that it's touched upon, and I just read it. So reread it because I think
Okay.
she actually now touches in it in
Okay,
there.
okay.
But
Thanks.
in truth, you are 100% correct, that she's always kind of moved away from that. And it really puts the onus on us as the brokers to say, you're not getting in there until it's been recorded.
Yep.
And rule of thumb for new brokers, you just heard Mr. Bussey say this, who's a seasoned broker, don't wait till Friday to close your property. My game plan has always been, I close on Monday and Tuesday, and I close before 12 o'clock because I want to make sure that we got it closed in the morning, and by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, those keys are handed over. So just a rule of thumb for brokers. All right.
Excellent advice, Tom. I really do. It's
Oh, I
something I didn't
appreciate
learn
you.
probably my first year or two. And for me, it's Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. Those are the only days I'll try to close if we can.
Right. Because by the
Thank
time Friday rolls around, you're gonna run into a headache. Okay. Okay. In the possession date is other than the time the funding date requirements are satisfied, the buyer and seller execute a separate written agreement outlining the terms. Here you go. That's that occupancy agreement. So if your seller's going to stay there through the weekend because they can't move and you all agree, there better be an occupancy agreement in it. And keep in mind that occupancy agreement, you're out of the picture. That's an agreement between the seller and the buyer. All you're doing is facilitating an agreement for them. 1031 exchanges, not to get too caught up in it. If you get caught up in a 1031, make sure you either communicate to me or understand the fact that a 1031 requires an intermediary, a qualified intermediary. I can't say that word. And what that is Bill McCoy, for example, is that. For example, he actually becomes a straw man to move it forward. And there's a lot of rules and requirements of a 1031. Off the top of my head, real quick one is that once they close their property that they're going to use a 1031 on their property in Denver, for sake of, from that moment they close it, they have 45 days to find a property here to put under contract. What happens if it falls out? The 45 days start again. But I will tell you, if you're looking at 1031 tax deferred, learn it. And that's the catch of all this business, guys. We basically have this dry template, if you will, as a purchase agreement, but there's so much more to know it. And right now, because the market's so hard, I've got a lot of people coming in here going, hey man, I want to do this commercial deal. Well, have you done commercial in the past? No. How do you do it? Well, even my 30 years of experience isn't going to be able to explain it to you in 5 minutes. It's a big deal. Residential is where we predominantly lean in Keller Williams. And, we have a lot of expertise aside from myself, but people who have a lot of experience on residential. Okay. I always put this in here about the buyer shall order. It should actually be seller. My mistake. Shall order from, because normally they do that. But the buyer has the right to select the title company. That's the default. Does not always mean that's the rule. Because a lot of times a title company's already started up the business. They're going to turn right around and counter you and say, hey, you may be wanting to use Prima all day long, but guess what? So-and-so over at Fidelity has been working on play nice. I mean, if there's an absolute reason that you can't, whole different story, but always play nice in anything that you do with this. Okay. I'm moving through here a little quicker, guys. Of the ones that are going to bite you, a lot of the stuff. Here we go. This is always the fun one here. Prorations. explain that to your buyer. What does that mean? Well, that means that if you were in half the month you're buying the house on the 15th, well, the first 15 days, the seller was in the house, but there's a bill. All right, that's the prorations. Well, taxes are the perfect example. Boom. Well, the taxes are due in November and they lived already through August. Well, you're going to pay for part of that new buyer and it's going to be back and forth. It's going to be credited. Be aware of that. It also gives me a time to always point out, make sure to work out P&M, the water and the gas for transfer. This is not necessarily the responsibility of the escrow company to do that. A lot of them do that, but truth be said, it's not their responsibility. So you and the other broker get together and say, hey man, we need to transfer. We're going to close on this date. So, I'll tell my seller, all right, give them a little slop. Say, leave the electricity on until it's transferred, maybe a day or two after closing. Give yourself a little time. Be aware of extensions. This just happened to me. One of the brokers, we're going to close on the 1st of December. There was an extension to close on the 15th. But the seller had already said, oh, okay, I'll leave the electricity and the gas and the water on until the 3rd. Extension came. She forgot to tell. She didn't live there. So all of a sudden, when they came in to close on the 15th, everything was shut off. Had an angry buyer. But really, the seller and the buyer, the brokers needed to get together. So, oh yeah, have you done anything on the utilities? Have you told your buyer and seller to do? And all it was is them saying, oh, I'm not quite moving out yet. So let's go ahead and instead of on the 3rd, can you do it on the 20th? It's biting us these days. So just be aware of it. All right, guys, same thing. These are pretty much cut and dry. Any of those fees, I always put over here as required by the lender. Probably should have put a check mark there, seller, buyer, whatever it may be. Same thing over here, okay? Oh, this is wrong. It should be on this side. Loan should be on the buyer side. Closing, pretty much everybody's going to split the cost there. Your buyer recorder fee is going to be on the buyer side, seller side. Title commitment normally is going to be on the seller side. Same thing over here on the mortgage side, because the buyer is the one borrowing the money. And the deletions and exceptions 1 through 4. And for those people who are new, this is always my hardest one to explain to you, is that the bottom line, when it says deletions, it doesn't calculate, right? It means eliminate. Well, really what deletions mean here is just the opposite. You want it added in to the policy. It's always goofy. I always tell people, just imagine you're the insurance company. The title is nothing but insurance, right? You're writing it to favor you. So you're not going to put in all these endorsements or these other exceptions because it's going to cost you money. So you're not going to do it. So the only way that you can, it's written in there. Oh no, we won't protect you from, a quick claim deed because you're writing it for your benefit. Well, you've got to delete those items and 1 through 4 of those deletions. Come talk to me more about it. Go talk to Will about it. He can tell you. Same thing goes over here on the miscellaneous and so forth. You can see I check mark just things that bite you. Survey, what's a survey versus an ILR? 2 different components. Same thing with transfer fees. Very big when you get into the HOAs or the COAs. Who's going to pay for those things? Who's going to transfer them over? Normally, it's on the seller side. They want to sell their property, but that doesn't mean that there isn't some proration sometimes on those HOA fees. Okay. How are we doing time? We better finish this up. FERPTA, always a fun one. They've kind of cleaned it up a little bit because basically the FERPTA exceptions for the most part, I haven't yet to find any of the title companies in here. They normally will take care of this for you to find out if the person is a foreign person or not. In the 30 years that I've been doing this, I've only had one person that actually had to utilize the FERPTA clause, and the guy was from England, but he was well aware of it. And all that is making sure that people aren't laundering money. That's what it comes down to. Now, I saw on the news yesterday that the Congress is going to be increasing more issues of people laundering money through real estate. So I have a gut feeling we may be seeing some more stuff coming our way here pretty quick. Don't know what it may be. 9 times out of 10, the exception does not apply. Okay, the buyer will be using the property as a primary residence. So 9 times out of 10 is that. Even this is the one that makes me laugh now. The sale of property is not more than 300,000. Well, we're shot here in Santa Fe because everything now is that. So the only one we can rely on is the primary resident. Okay. Insurance, make sure you take care of this. This is the first deadline I always give my buyers. Okay, buyers, you've got 10 days to call your insurance company that you used for your previous house to tell them you're buying this new house in Santa Fe. Will take it from there because 9 times, oh, great, you're buying a new house in Santa Fe, great. Oh, let us get the insurance going. But you got that 10-day time to do it because you want to make sure the house is insurable. Where you get into a lot of the problems is when you start getting over to Pecos or you start getting over here to Glorieta, there have been companies that go, no, we're not going to insure it. It's in a fire zone. We don't want to deal with it. Wow. And so then you're hustling, trying to find insurance for you because by the 20th day, you bought it with or without insurance, your buyer. So they've got a short period of time to verify it. And in one case that and I was on the other side of this deal, my seller, he actually said, here, this is the insurance company we use in Santa Fe because the buyers couldn't find it. They could not find it. It was in a high fire zone. They landed up going over here to Armijo's State Farm. He insured theirs. Yeah, we'll insure you. But for people coming out of town, they panic when all of a sudden they go and use their USAA like me. And USAA is just using a triangulation map and they pop it right here in the middle of the forest and they go, New Mexico fire zone? No, we're not going to insure it.
Or a FEMA floodplain that accidentally was put in Arroyo Privado and Aldea was like that for me. And, I couldn't sell the property. It had to be cash.
It had to be cash.
Yep.
So those are those kind of things that will bite you. Here is our famous ILR report, okay, or state boundary or the ALTA. For most residents and particularly town site, particularly, an improvement location works, right? Because they've been recorded, and all it is they're going to the county, they're pulling up the old survey ILR. Oh, there it is. That's good. You start getting into doing state boundary surveys. And I know my blonde girls there, they're selling ranches and so forth. You start talking big dollars for a lot of that stuff. If there's not another survey that's been done, it's $6,000-8,000 to do a ranch. The reality, but that's true. So if you're talking to your buyer, you definitely want to make sure that the seller is going to pay for that. And they may come back and counter and say, you know what, we've got an old survey. And if title's willing to accept it, will you accept it? Yeah. If title's willing to do that. But a lot of times title will say, or they'll come back and say, will you split the cost? Because it's going to be so expensive. We check off here, other to satisfy title, whatever it may be. If I'm going through the deal. Last one here, selected ILR to include flag corners if located. Be careful with that one. People check it just willy-nilly. But if you've got a ranch out there, man, it takes a lot to flag corners versus somebody who's only got 3 or 4 acres. Yeah, we can go put some flags out. No big deal.
Good questions there, Tom,
Yeah.
in the chat from Amy Rice. That's who it is.
Okay. Yes, Amy Rice. I'm sorry, I can't. I'm not looking at chat, Amy. What you got, kid?
I have 2 questions. I thought buyers paid for appraisals typically. Is that not
Yes.
the case?
That's true.
Okay. And then a lot of homes here I would think would be second homes, not primary residences, or is that?
Yeah, it can be second homes when you're going up to the FERPTA like that as well. So it could be a problem, but understand that second home isn't affecting your buyer. Where it is it's really in the event the seller is not a foreign person, it doesn't have a big effect. Where the biggest effect is if that person is somebody who lived from overseas.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Sorry about that, Amy. I'm not looking at it, so you just got to yell out at me.
Hey, Tom.
Yes,
Sorry,
I Ariana.
Hey, so just on the survey thing, just a few things that I've run into in that regard is that what can be really helpful is if they do have an old survey, if the seller can reach out to whoever did that survey and ask them if they would be willing to update it and what kind of timeline that would be, because oftentimes a survey in rural areas, I work in a lot of rural areas up here in northern New Mexico, and so it can, surveys can take months, which can screw up your whole deal, and so I've had a situation where the person that did the original survey over 20 years ago, which the title company wouldn't accept at this point because they wanted an updated one, was willing to come and update the survey in a relatively short time frame. And I've had other situations where I had to call around, to help the buyer to get a survey on his 40 acres, call around to find someone that could do it in less than 6 months. So it is really important what you mark. I've become very cautious about that section.
Good for you.
And but there, I just found ways to troubleshoot, like if they do have an existing survey, call the surveyors and ask.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, I think I had this conversation with, I don't know if it was Pam and Amy, I can't recall, but my ranch in northern New Mexico, right? Original homestead ranch. I got a patent on this thing, right? And the catch-22 is that survey is, how old am I? 60, that thing's at least 60 years old. But it's the patent that I have on it, Woodrow Wilson's signature and Franklin Roosevelt on it and somewhere like that. Wow. But if we ever sold that property, it's quite frank, it's gonna cost me some big bucks, because even though I know exactly where those patent marks are and all those metal caps that they used during that time, it ain't gonna be cheap. So I just tell everybody, don't sell the ranch, hang on to it. Okay, let's keep going. Deadlines are always important. Keep in mind that your survey and your ILR are going to be toward the tail end of your contract. So you'll see, I'll put like 20 days from acceptance if it's a 30 or 40-day one, objection deadlines and resolution. Give your title company some room in there too, because the seller isn't going to want to pay for a survey right off the bat if it's not going to fly. Okay. Lead base, we all know lead base, if it was built before 1978, and there's various forms on that as well. You'll find in Santa Fe, there's many houses have been built long before 1978. And many of them have not gone through the remediation program. That does not mean those houses can't sell, because they sell all the time. What it is an encapsulation over the years of all the paints that have been on top of that. Where they worry is actually if somebody goes in there and says, hey, we're going to go ahead and strip it all the way down to the original wood, now you might have a problem. Because in that respect, you might have to have a remediator go in there and do that kind of work for you. So just keep it in mind, in the back of your mind. HOA, there's those wonderful forms that I want you to look at, those HOAs. And if you have questions with HOAs, always come and talk to me about it, because there's all kinds of different HOAs and the requirements that are behind it. And then the infamous and the famous, oh my goodness, let's see who's on here. Septic systems, woohoo! There's a class, I think, Kinsey said there's going to be a septic class, maybe it's this week sometime, either in Farmington, but it's also going to be Zoom, is what I understand. Septics are the lifeblood of northern New Mexico. When you have an opportunity to get a CEU on septic, highly recommend it. Any of these things, even though I go through the PA, when they have anatomy of a purchase agreement, take the class. You need the CEUs anyway. So just take the class anyway and learn from somebody else as well. Wells, again, we're seeing more and more people migrate out of Santa Fe because there's not enough product in Santa Fe. So we're beginning to see a lot more people having to explain wells, having to understand how the state engineer works, has to understand of an unpermitted well. Pam Sawyer, I give her a lot of shout outs because she's been dealing with quite a bit of it, and she's not afraid. And to go and talk to the state engineer's office. I did for many years. I know, Will, you've gone in there and talked to them, get to be their friends, because when you need some help on wells, the only place you're going to get that information is from the state engineer's office. All right.
and be so nice to them. I mean, they are so overworked. I mean, they really are. Just be so nice. Bring them cookies, bring them whatever,
Right.
and just a big smile. It just goes so far.
It
really
does.
Yep.
In this business, and I'm seeing the people who are doing very well in this business are the people who are being very nice.
Yep.
Same thing goes to tenant occupying the property. There's your form there. Keep in mind that some people have tenant rights. So sometimes when you're thinking you're going to go and see a property so easy, and you go, what's the matter with this listing broker? He won't let me see it. Well, there's a good possibility you might have a tenant in there, and it's a tenant that you're dealing with more than the listing broker on it. Solar panels, seeing more and more. There might be a loan on it. There might be a lease on it. You know, you're buying the house, all of a sudden you got a cloud on the title. Wow, how come? Well, the people before them, they didn't get their lease cleared. They didn't buy it properly. But solar panels are another one that are subject to a lease or a loan. Okay. Here's that documents. You can do it various ways. I'm a big one on doing it 3 days upon acceptance, because I just kind of, I don't like to put a hard date if I don't have to. In this contract, I did, just to give you kind of an idea. So if you've got a property disclosure and it's getting old, and you know, Ashley's pushing back a lot on people who said, oh, well, the people never live there, so we're not going to do a property disclosure. That's hence the reason for the whole new adverse property disclosure we're doing. Her belief is this: even if you've never lived in there and you've been the landlord, you're going to know that you had to put a new roof on it. You're going to know that there was a plumbing issue. You're going to know that there are some of those things at the very minimum. And, you know, if they don't have it, they don't have it. We're a non-property disclosure state. But I'll give you guys a little heads up on the other side. If you're listening, try to get it done. And it's not one that's going to break your back anymore. It's just a little sentence. Yes, I had a roof leak and it was repaired. Boom. But it's given a baseline to that buyer when they're buying the property. Same thing on road documents. We're seeing more and more of that. Do we have a shared road agreement? Do we have a shared water agreement? You know, do we have a shared well agreement? There are a lot of those things that are beginning to pop up. Same thing with HOA. And it's that discussion that you're hopefully that the listing broker has provided you with documents in the listing agreement. Still drives me nuts, man. When I open up a listing agreement and it shows docs and it says EFAX, really, are you that lazy of a broker that you're not trying to sell this property? Put that information in there the best you can. I see Will smiling. So those are things in there. HOA has a little funky one because you got this middle box objection deadline, meaning you, the buyer, have an objection that says buyer has no less than 7 days from receipt of the HOA disclosure and certificate of object. A lot of times that's a CC&Rs, and a lot of times it will be done for you by the title company. Check and see if they'll do it, if they have those docs. Because if it's a big development like Rancho Viejo and so forth like that, they'll have those docs. If it's a small little HOA like where I live, the guy who does it up there, namely me, make sure that you have those long beforehand. And you can see 7 days forward. We said this is going to be closing on the 15th. You're going to have to make sure that you're doing your objections by the 5th, but you're going to be requesting that it's by the 1st. So you have a little slop time to make sure it's done. Deadlines are everything, guys. We're getting close. Seller's duty to disclose. Seller shall disclose the buyer any adverse materials. There you go again. Investigation of surrounding area. This is the one I hate and love at the same time. This is the new one that came a couple years ago. It says here, buyer entering into this agreement, buyer represents that they are satisfied with the neighborhood and surrounding areas and agrees that any issue regarding the surrounding area will not serve as grounds for termination. So what that means is that when your buyer is looking at a neighbor, they're going to ask you, well, what's crime here? You need to tell them, you know what, you really need to go on the website. You need to drive by in the evening to see if this is where you want to where you want to live. Because it says here, buyer warrants that prior to entering into this agreement, they have thoroughly investigated the neighborhood and the area surrounding the property to include, but not to be limited to the investigation of the following. existence of registered sex offenders or other persons convicted of crimes that may reside in the area. I've had the instant, hey, we're just going to sign this electronic, come back at me. And I've had to go back to this paragraph and said, hey, buyer, did you not read this? Well, they didn't explain it to me. Did you not sign this? Yes, we did. Well, initially this page is acknowledgement to me that you read it. I know they didn't. I know they didn't. And I know their broker didn't communicate to them. But you know, it's me doing the back step, you know, the moonwalk on trying to make sure that, hey, you initialed it, guy, and you should have paid attention to that. But what a bad place for people to be, to say, man, I didn't realize that when we bought the house, I went, there's a bunch of gangbangers. Well, did you drive by at night? No. And here's the new little item. Attention buyers and sellers. In-person viewing, buyer has or has not viewed the property. That's brand new. So when these people that I've dealt with says, well, we don't even live in town, we just bought it off the internet. Well, you initialed that you had knowledge. So
This is really the same thing, right, that we, like Barry had on his spreadsheet comparison. And we talked about a lot on the 3 o'clock, right? So many people buying sight unseen, looking at virtual tours and Matterport videos, things like that. Has they actually seen it? I think it's very important, right, in multiple offers.
totally, Ray, totally. And it's gone to the point that I know that Ashley, whenever you see new things like that, that just means that they're burning up Ashley's phone in Albuquerque saying, well, you know, and it's over this specific thing, the inspection part of this. Well, we don't live here, but we bought the house and now we found that we're in a rough part of town. Okay. How did you see the house? Oh, we looked on the internet.
It looks great online, right? But when they drive the neighborhood.
Yeah. Amen. Let's see, buyer's duties and right, conduct, this is of course, due diligence and inspections. I won't beat you guys up too much with this. You can read my highlights later, but this is probably going to be the new, be aware, you know, do your inspections. Let's see if I can pull this thing. I always have a hard time when I can't. Let's see if I can do this. Yeah, here it is. This is the new, I just reading through it. I didn't get through all of it. This is the new form, home inspection form. And it basically is telling the inspector, telling your buyer, hey, get an inspection. And what I love on it, it's telling your buyers to initial it. And it tells them everything they should be doing or what your inspector should be doing or what they won't be doing. It is pretty extensive. If you're not using it, I highly recommend it. I will be probably pushing for this instead of, you know, that HUD form that we always use for your inspection. I think this probably will be better because it really kind of puts the inspector on the hook of what he or she hasn't done, but it gives you as the buying broker, hey, I gave you all this stuff to check out. You need to make sure you're doing this stuff. And I notified you on what you needed to do. Okay?
Wasn't that
That's
HUD
awesome.
form, the HUD form,
Sorry.
wasn't that required by the lenders if they're doing a HUD?
Yeah, it is. And that HUD form will still be required, Ray, correct. But, you know, we had one and, you know, I'm kind of going through battles a little bit with it because we had one for a long time. And Will, you've been along here around. Remember when we used to say, hire a plumber, we had that form. The thing I haven't liked about that form is we also had that with the price of what the range was. And those have totally changed. And lastly, just because of risk management on my side, it had a KW Santa Fe logo on top. And I'm going, no. Don't hang that on my hat. I would much rather hang it on the hat of the Real Estate Commission saying we now have a form from the New Mexico Association of Real Estate on information. That's a battle that I'll have with my other QBs to see what they think about that at the state, within our region that we work.
When did
in.
that come out, Tom? Is that like new?
Yeah, brand new,
I
brand new.
never- That's great.
Yeah, it's a brand new one. So, you know, take a peek at all those You know, I know that I got drive you guys all crazy with my highlighted blue, but there's a reason. You know, I just don't pick through those just for fun. Take a look at that. So as we all know, it comes down to make sure that all of your people are getting their inspections. Do not put yourself in that position that, well, you know what? I just got this one guy and, you know, he's good. Or, you know, Will said, only use this one person. Cover yourself, because what I'm seeing more and more, guys, and I don't mean this as a fear tactic, and it's been sitting in this chair for this period of time. Everybody's coming back and trying to hang the inspections on the brokers. We're not inspectors. We went through a really big litigation that I had to be at. It could have been a $300,000 cost on the broker and me and the company. But at the end of the day, you know, it was not us. So, but it wasn't fun going through all the E&Os and all the lawyers and all the times to get to the point that we finally, and we did settle, but we didn't settle on anything even remotely close to that amount of money. And we were able to divvy up the amount between us, the broker, and the inspector and the seller. We still took some sense of liability with it, because they still pointed at the broker and said, this broker's been in business a long time and should have known that it was Entran. Oh, excuse me, that it was Kitech. But that's the way it was. So I know we went a little over Shaggy Dog today, guys, but we'll be back next week with the second part of this. And take a look in the meantime so that you have questions. And normally the second day doesn't take quite as much time as the first day, because I give you a little, probably too much dog and pony with
Can I
Paramount.
bring up one more question, Tom?
Sure.
It'd probably be a good question for the 3 o'clock, but I'm not gonna be able to be on there.
Okay.
I might be on there late, about 3:30. But I was having a conversation with a broker this morning. This is right along these lines of plumbers. And this broker is really going above and beyond, you know, trying to do it all themselves, trying to be the hero, I guess, and step in and meeting the plumbers, you know, opening the doors for them. And you know, the buyer and seller actually had agreed to just put up some money at closing, $3,200.
Okay.
But the broker thinks that that's too high, too much money for the representing the seller. And agreeing to meet them out there. It's supposed to be 9 hours of work. And they think, no, that's too much. It should only take 7. I'm saying, stop. You know, you're going way above. Think about it this way. Would Darlene Street do that? Heck no.
Good.
Right.
Thank you, Ray.
Heck no. I mean, how much you want to make an hour? Your time per hour. I mean, you're cutting your head off, you know, just by your face.
Well, thank you, Ray. As your QB here, I mean, you're handling the risk management side of it. It's not our responsibility. Our responsibility is this damn contract and to bring the parties together. But our responsibility doesn't go beyond the fact of saying, hey, I need to be the know-all of real estate and what things should cost. You know, I've been doing this 30 plus years and I've got a lot of knowledge. That's why I even brought Will in this. I know Will has a lot of knowledge about what these Adobe homes should look like and all that. But you know what? We're not the inspectors. We're not the plumbers. We're not the roofers. All I am is the guy that gets this contract. And if you like it at the end of the day and we feel good and you've seen all the risks and you've hired the inspectors that you're happy with and you sign and we close, we're done.
I get it too, right? I mean, I've been there. I've tried to be the hero and step in and go above and beyond, thinking they're going to give you more referrals. I think it's less. They respect you less.
Yeah, and it's more important to explain to your buyer, look, it isn't that I don't have this experience, but I also now have the experience of what people are getting sued about. And even though today, you know, you're telling me, oh, Tom, help me out because you know everything about Adobe and so forth. Well, yeah, I know I have a lot of knowledge and I can tell you about my house maybe, but at the end of the day, I can't afford to get sued by the seller or by you or having to go to E&O because I gave you the wrong information. So you need to go to an expert. I'm not an expert. Yeah. So anyway, that's why I have so much hair on my head, right? Why my beard is so black. So I hope you guys learned a few things on it today. We'll go back next week to this, to the second part of it. And if you want just the, well, if you want me to send you the PDF, email me. It doesn't have the second part in it, but I'll email you the first part that we did, and you can take a look at it. We can have some more fun. Okay.
Well, thanks, Tom.
Thanks, guys. Sorry I ran so late. Talk to you. See you at 3. Bye.
Yeah, you need a quick break. See you soon.